Detective Brandon Gentry had always trusted his instincts. They told him when a suspect was lying, when a case had gone cold, and when a lead was more than just coincidence. That's what made him the precinct's rising star: sharp mind, dogged perseverance, and an uncanny knack for seeing patterns others missed. So when the disappearances began, 3 in the span of a month, then 7 more, all across the city, Brandon felt something gnawing at the edge of his perception. Each victim vanished without a trace, save for cryptic symbols scrawled near the scenes. Spiral claws, crescent moons intertwined with animal eyes, sigils no gangbanger or petty criminal would bother with. His superiors shrugged it off. "Cult nonsense," Captain Ramirez said, tapping ash from his cigarette. "Probably some whack job coven. Freaks come and go." But Brandon knew better. The symbols weren't just for show. They were part of something older, deeper, something primal. That's what led him, 3 weeks later, to a decaying warehouse on the city's fringe. Dressed in plain clothes, he attended his first meeting of the Moon Ascendant, a fringe group obsessed with ancient transformation myths. They spoke of shedding human weakness, of returning to the wild self. Brandon's cover held, his badge stayed locked away, buried under layers of persona. The group's leader, Lucian Crane, was magnetic. Tall, lean, with silver hair framing sharp eyes that seemed to glow in the dim candlelight. His voice slid into Brandon's ears like warm honey, promising liberation, strength, a life beyond fear. "Man was never meant to be caged by law and order," Crane whispered one night, as the congregation drank from strange wooden bowls. "We are beasts beneath our skin. We've simply forgotten." Brandon played along. He drank the elixirs, chanted the ancient words, but never fully let down his guard. Until the night he did. It was the 10th meeting when things spiraled beyond control. They gathered under a blood-red moon, deep in the woods outside the city. Brandon watched as Crane unveiled a small vial, silver and obsidian glass pulsing faintly as if alive. "This is the sacrament," Crane announced, his eyes locking onto Brandon's. "Tonight, we cross the threshold." Brandon hesitated. His instincts screamed to pull back, to blow his cover and call for backup. But something in Crane's gaze pinned him in place. When the liquid touched his tongue, it burned like molten silver. His veins ignited, his body convulsed. He remembered falling to his knees, claws tearing from his fingertips, bones cracking and reshaping. The world sharpened. Sounds, scents, sensations beyond human comprehension flooded his mind. The taste of blood, the pull of the moon. He awoke hours later, his hands soaked in earth and sweat, his mouth filled with the metallic tang of meat. Lucian Crane stood over him, smiling. "Welcome home, Brandon." The days that followed were a blur of chaos and clarity. Brandon's senses never dulled. He heard conversations blocks away, smelled adrenaline on passing strangers. But worse than the physical changes were the whispers. They slithered into his thoughts when he tried to sleep. "Let go, Brandon. Embrace it. You're more than human now." He discovered the horrifying truth. Crane wasn't a fraud. He was a bloodline alpha, a rare breed of werewolf, able to craft new lycanthropes, bending them to his will. But this wasn't about pack survival or ancient rites. Crane was building something darker, a superpowered criminal network. His chosen converts weren't just zealots, they were foot soldiers, wolves in human clothing, ready to seize the city from the shadows. Brandon, now one of them, faced an impossible dilemma. Blow his cover and risk becoming a lab rat for government spooks, or go deeper, use his new abilities to expose the cult from within. He chose the latter. Night after night, Brandon navigated the cult's labyrinthine structure. His mind, once ruled by logic and procedure, now wrestled with hunger and instinct. But he held on to a sliver of his former self, detective training honed into a mental lifeline. He tracked money laundering fronts masked as healing centers, secret caches of silver-laced weaponry, lists of politicians and corporate figures already under Crane's sway. The corruption ran wider than he'd feared. This wasn't just a cult, it was a metastasizing empire. And every night, the beast inside him grew stronger. Sometimes, he wanted to let go, to abandon the badge, embrace the primal rush, hunt under the moon without guilt. Power was seductive. It whispered of freedom from the rules, from the paperwork, from the chain of command, from weakness. But he remembered the victims, the people disappearing into Crane's machine. He remembered his oath. The breaking point came when Crane summoned him to a private meeting. "You've done well, Brandon," Crane said, pouring 2 glasses of red liquid. It wasn't wine. Brandon could smell the iron beneath the aroma. "I didn't do it for you," Brandon growled, but Crane waved the comment away. "You're special. I chose you for a reason. You're not just another convert." Crane leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Join me fully. Help me build a new order. The city is rotten. Politicians, cops, bankers, all clawing for scraps. We can rise above it." Brandon clenched his fists, claws pressing into his palms. The old him wanted to say no, arrest Crane on the spot. But the new him, the wolf, wanted to say yes. For a moment, he stood on the edge of surrender. Then he thought of Captain Ramirez, of the precinct, of the missing families holding on to false hope, of his own reflection, barely recognizable anymore. "I'll think about it," he lied. That night, Brandon made his move. Under cover of darkness, he transmitted everything he'd gathered to a secure channel. Names, locations, hierarchies. He couldn't trust the whole department. Too many could be compromised. But he trusted Detective Elena Vega, his old partner. Vega was skeptical at first. "You sound insane, Brandon," she whispered over a burner phone. "Werewolves? Cult armies? Check the files I sent you. Cross-reference the disappearances, you'll see." A long pause. Then, Jesus Christ. They devised a plan. A multi-agency task force would raid the cult's compound in 2 nights. Brandon just had to survive until then. But Crane had other ideas. The full moon rose, and with it came betrayal. Another cultist, a recruit jealous of Brandon's favor, outed him. "He's still loyal to the humans," the man spat, pointing a clawed hand. "He's been feeding them information." Crane's eyes flashed, silver and deadly. "Is that true, Detective?" Brandon's heart raced. His wolf wanted to tear the accuser's throat out, but his human mind held steady. He needed an out. "I'm loyal to the mission," Brandon said, voice low. "But you've lost sight of it, Lucien. This isn't about evolution anymore. It's about empire." Crane laughed, sharp and cold. "And what's wrong with empire? You think human governments don't build empires? At least mine will be honest about its nature." The cult members circled. Dozens of eyes gleamed in the firelight. Brandon's back pressed against the ritual stone. He had no choice. With a roar, he shifted, muscles stretching, bones snapping, fur sprouting along his skin. His uniform shredded as his new form took shape. But he wasn't like the others. Brandon had trained his mind to stay intact. It was the wolf and the man, combined. Claws flashed, teeth tore. He fought like a hurricane, taking down cultists with precision strikes, disabling rather than killing when he could. They weren't all monsters, not yet. Crane was the true cancer. Their final confrontation was brutal. Alpha versus the turned. Crane's power was immense. He moved faster than thought, his claws like silver scythes. But Brandon had something Crane didn't, a detective's mind, tactical analysis woven into instinct. He used Crane's arrogance against him, feigning weakness, drawing him in close. When Crane lunged for the kill, Brandon drove a silvered shard, stolen from one of the cult's own weapons, into his heart. Crane gasped, his form flickering between man and beast, eyes wide with something like relief. "Maybe I went too far," he whispered, collapsing into ash and fur. The task force arrived at dawn. Vega led the raid, storming the compound, rounding up survivors. Some fought, some wept, some begged to be cured. There was no cure. Brandon emerged from the forest, eyes glowing faintly, fur slick with sweat and blood. He met Vega's gaze. "You good?" she asked, her voice cracking. "No," he said, honest, "but I'm alive." Weeks passed. The headlines were sanitized, fringe criminal organization dismantled in massive bust. No mention of werewolves, no whispers of magic. The world wasn't ready for that. Brandon returned to duty, but everything had changed. He worked the night shift now, chasing leads the rest of the force couldn't fathom. He walked between worlds, the human and the supernatural. Sometimes the hunger clawed at him. Power still whispered in his ear. "Let go, Brandon. Be the predator. Be free." But he didn't, because someone had to hold the line. And as long as the city had monsters, Detective Brandon Gentry would hunt them. Even if one of them was himself.